Hello, and thanks for joining us. I'm Shannon, an Extension Ag Economist with the Center for Ag Profitability based in North Platte. Today is part of our weekly webinar series, typically live every Thursday at noon. Find the schedule of upcoming webinars as well as the archive of every recording on our center's website at cap.unl.edu. Today, we'll hear about the importance of managing stress levels and reducing the effects of unwanted stress. Farmers and ranchers are no exception to experiencing stress. In fact, stress seems to be prevalent in the agricultural sector. Too much stress can make us more accident prone, and it can affect our overall health. This webinar will offer information on identifying common stressors, recognizing stress symptoms, and managing stress. Presenting for us today is Glennis McClure, an Extension Farm and Ranch Management Analyst with the Center for Ag Profitability. Glennis also works with Extension's Rural Wellness Team to share resources and identify ways to collaborate and enact positive change in communities and individuals who are impacted by stress. Hello and welcome, Glennis.
Hi, Shannon. Thanks for helping out today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and get started. I'll share my screen. Okay. Should be. Okay, can you see my screen okay, Shannon?
Yep, looks good.
Very good. All right. So welcome, everyone. Yes, this program, Mending the Stress Fence, is a program that we have cooperated with, and I'm a trained facilitator in this program, as well as communicating with farmers under stress. And it was initially written by Michigan State University Extension. And so this is a program that was designed to be particular for producers, directed to producers. So, you know, we all have stress. So think about, what stress do you have today? Seems like maybe you don't have any stress. That would be awesome and wonderful. But most of us have stress on a daily basis of some type, right? So have you ever gone to the doctor and your blood pressure is a little more elevated than normal? You know, is stress causing a little bit of that? Just getting there. I was actually in Omaha yesterday for some medical appointments, and trying to find my way around the complex there was quite interesting. And we were kind of a little bit into it, just moving from one place to the next, and my blood pressure was still high. And it's and that happens quite often. It really does. So that just stress can be with us all the time, and especially with farmers and ranchers. We have stresses quite often. I am a farm wife, as well as I work for the University in Ag Economics, so I can relate to a lot of the different things that happen on the farm with stress. You know, anything that's aside from our usual activities. I know we have an egg laying business on our farm, and you know, things kind of cook along just really fine, you know, as long as everything's good. And then, you know, there's one day a week where the eggs have to go out and the feed truck is there and everything's happening. And so, you know, there's that different level of stress that can happen on an ongoing basis. You know, when things are changed, our routine is changed. All right. So the objectives of this program are laid out here for you. I think it's really important for us to learn to understand the signs and symptoms of our stress. So what's going on with me? You know, why am I feeling this way? Is that because I'm stressed? You know, obviously there's some natural stress getting ready for a webinar, right? So anyway, there's 8 dimensions of wellness that we want to talk about, and a wellness wheel that we'll share some resources regarding that. And then also, I think part of it is understanding where stress is for us, but understanding those around us and how they might be reacting to stress. And sometimes it's just a matter of even just communicating and asking open-ended questions, so that you can learn where someone else is in the realm of things as far as stress. And also trying to pay attention when there's a lot of prolonged stress, and we call that distress. trying to pay attention to others and understand where they're at. And then also, and when things get really just kind of prolonged and we have that distress constantly, and we're going to talk just briefly about understanding and awareness and warning signs of suicide. So, and resources that we can turn to. So as we know, as I've already mentioned, agriculture is a stressful occupation. Basically, we are at high risk for fatal or non-fatal injuries. We often have the financial pressures that come along with the farming or ranching, as well as other small businesses. It's not just all about, farmers having stress, okay? But we have those financial pressures. There's a lot of risk involved, as we'll talk about. And a lot of things are unpredictable, right? We're not certain. Mother Nature does its thing. There's a lot of different things. We don't know when the tractor's going to break down. We don't know when certain things are going to happen. But they could just happen. And so there's that unpredictability that causes that. All right. So it's important that we learn how to manage our stress and to reduce the effects of unwanted stress. Too much stress can make you accident prone, and we don't need that because we've got a lot to do on the farm, and it can affect your health too. So you can start by learning to identify common stressors, recognize the symptoms of stress, and manage our stress. And by doing these 3 things, you'll make your workplace safer and live a more fulfilling life. Good. So there again, farming is stressful. It's hard on the body, when we're young, we maybe don't notice some of the things, but we definitely notice it now as we're getting older on how we try to do the same things we've always done, but yet it's a little harder as we get older, and the farming and all the physical activity that it takes is really kind of hard on us. Sometimes the stress will add to increased heart and artery disease, hypertension, as I mentioned, high blood pressure, ulcers, and nervous disorders. And then also, actually, we throw in the opioid use that actually has been fairly prevalent in the rural areas. And some have said that it's pretty easy to access those, and that can cause even more issues. Also, the inadequate medical presence. So in the rural area, are there the mental health professionals that can help us? Are they close by that we can get to an easy appointment and visit with them? And that's been sort of an issue. It definitely has been. I really believe, though, in the last several years, we were trained on some of this curriculum back in 2019. And then we had the flood. It was early 2019. We had the flood and all of those effects, the snowstorm, and then the flood, and so on. So we had a lot of things going on. And so we right away were able to do some programming and to help some folks, think about all the stress and all, that relates to those kinds of disasters. And then we had the pandemic year. And I really believe, though, that there's been more conversation, maybe because of that, and hopefully an increase in those people and folks paying attention, and even the medical field paying attention to us and our stress. Because I know when I go to the doctor, they're usually asking, they did yesterday, what is your level of stress? What are the things that are affecting you in a negative way? Because obviously they want to know that if people are experiencing some difficulties, that they can refer us to some help with that. So I think it's that's improved, but it still can be an issue in some of our very rural areas. So have you heard about the agrarian imperative? Dr. Roseman out of Iowa coined that term, and I can relate to it. It's really that powerful connection that farmers have with their land and their animals, and it's really a difficult thing to break. So I think there's that additional kinds of stress. There's so many things that can cause issues on the farm. Again, those unpredictability, the weather, all those kinds of things. Okay. But so I think there's even more. Sometimes it's like if let's say we're having financial difficulty, we don't want to lose the farm. Perhaps it's been handed down over multiple generations, and it really causes, sort of that increased anxiety over lots of things. All right. So if you think about what values farmers have. You know, they're hardworking, they're very determined, they want to take care of themselves and their families and so on. And then they want to be successful as business people. And so it's really a lot of times farming and ranching is part of our identity. And it's hard to consider ever doing anything else, right? It's just really hard. And so there's that agrarian imperative that really works sort of against us a little bit in that it puts more added pressure on, okay? Because hopefully you can relate to what I'm saying with all of that for sure. So what is stress and how is it defined? Okay, so stress is defined as a need or a demand that we confront. It's perceived as burdensome or threatening and can lead to physical or mental health problems, as I've already mentioned. But now think about this. Is stress always bad? So there's times, maybe you're getting ready for, we've just gone through the graduation season, and there can be that stress. It's a good stress. Sometimes that kind of motivates us though. A wedding that might be coming up or that kind of thing. That's what they call actually eustress, EU stress, EUSTRESS is eustress. So it's not always bad. And sometimes, you know, getting through the planting and harvesting season, it's exciting. You know, we know that there's stressful times with all of that. But sometimes that's what really pushes us to get through things. But then also, you think about then the opposite of that, stress, we often think of it as pretty bad, but I think it's especially bad if it's just prolonged, if we just can't get over it. And that's when we call it distress. All right, some things to think about there. So how do you know when you're feeling stressed? So we want to talk about signs and symptoms of that. And so what are your physical, mental, and emotional or social signs? So it can work on us physically. It can make us maybe more tired. We might have the headaches. We might have some anger, that kinds of things. So there's a physical, mental, emotional, or social side signs of stress. So, but you are the expert. Think about yourself and think about what happens to me when I get stressed. And if you're interested and want to share or comment or have any questions, feel free to jot that into either the chat or the Q&A, and we'll address it. But actually, if you want to share, you know, what does stress look like for you, or what does it sound like for you? Is it an anger kind of thing? Is it sometimes you just want to be, you know, just want to be isolated. You just want to be on your own and think through things. Again, you might get sick. There's just so many different things that we can look at as far as what signs of stress might be. And how would someone who knows you really well say that you respond to stress? Are you the quiet one? Are you the loud one? Do you tend to maybe, let's say, start drinking more or something? Some of these things that really compound or make things even worse sometimes for us. So here's a list of signs of stress. The body. So again, I mentioned the headaches. We might have stomach aches. We might, you know, just all these kinds of things. We have that high blood pressure thing going on. Some people dealing with the sugar issues might have, you know, some of that go kind of out of whack. Racing heart, or we just feel kind of sick, nauseated. All right. Our mind, again, that anxious feeling. We might be angry. We might be really sad. We just might have this bitter feeling, or even that depressed feeling for a time. Where, you know, just kind of that you might feel sort of helpless and it's kind of a short time, perhaps, or hopeless. All right. Actions. Sometimes we sleep too much. Maybe we can't sleep at all. Maybe we eat too much, or we don't eat at all. Okay. Maybe we increase our use, as I mentioned, of alcohol or cigarettes or whatever. We might be breaking things and so on. Okay. So again, think about what happens to you when you're stressed. And I can go either way. Either I don't feel like eating or I eat too much, you know. I know for sure that if I'm really stressed, my sleep is really affected by that. and that's not good. Obviously, then we got things that are compounding, right? I think too, I can feel nauseated, that kind of thing. So how does it look for you? And I think it's important to understand that. So what are some of the biggest stressors for you on your farm or ranch? Does some of this kind of hit a note with you? The weather, obviously. This year, we have some pockets now where we've gotten a lot of rain. We've had some flooding this last week or so, but we've also have still areas that are very much in drought. All right. And so we know that that can cause lots of stress. But hopefully, though, too, we're doing some things to mitigate. We've got, fortunately, we do have the crop insurance. We have livestock insurance. We have some of those things that can mitigate some of those weather effects. But like large debt loads, again, with interest rates going up and our costs going up and so on, that can also eventually we can get back to having these large debt loads that we're trying to manage. Government regulations, again, there can be some real positive things, like the insurance, some of the programs that can help us get through some of the sort of disaster type things. But there's just a lot of things too, if we're working with, some of our different programs on the land, understanding and making sure that we're in compliance. There's just a lot of rules and regs. I did tax work for a number of years and was never really my favorite thing to do. It was good to know and to learn and to understand, but it seems like there's always changes, keeping up with the changes. And then I did tax work for other people, so I didn't want to mess it up, So there's definitely things that are tough sometimes when we were trying to figure out and follow along with what the government is wanting us to do. All right, of course, we've got those machinery breakdowns. We've got, so again, as I mentioned, the high interest rates, crop yields, the drought situation again, insects, other things that can work on that. The livestock, we never know when our livestock, are going to turn ill. Again, I mentioned we're on a poultry farm, and nothing was ever mentioned before we built our new barn. We've been in poultry ever since I've been out of school, and then we did some hog finishing and so on. But the poultry, we built a new barn for actually breeding stock for laying hens. And but it was like that next year, the avian flu situation rears its ugly head. And we really have been very fortunate. We are a shower in, shower out facility. We've been very fortunate in avoiding that, spraying shoes, spraying tires on, when we know that it's pretty prevalent in our area. We've been very fortunate, knock on wood. But, that's something that's really totally, in a lot of ways out of our control because it's very highly contagious. But again, we try to mitigate those things, but, it can happen. It can still happen for sure, and can be pretty devastating in a lot of ways for us. Anyway, the commodity prices too, and how things have, how things have been changing, how we've had some good years here now, and now we see some softening of some of what's going on with that. And then, of course, just working with family members. Oftentimes, our farms and ranches now are pretty large, and we've got multiple families involved. So those can be things that then could add to our stress. So I think it's important, again, to think about ways you seek to manage your stress. Think about managing the strategy we'll use to a particular need. Brainstorm and explore the variety of coping strategies available, and learning new strategies or adopting different ways of managing stress that you may not have used before. Okay, so things to think about with all of that. One of the things that I think can be very helpful is thinking through these 8 dimensions of wellness. And so they're listed here for us to take a look at, and we'll kind of run through what some of this means here. So of course we hear, it's very true, I think, that any form of exercise can often help us relieve stress. Hopefully you've experienced that. I think it's a struggle, in my day-to-day life. I think, getting out and doing the simple things, walking, so on, are very, very important. But sometimes it's hard to do. I think it's easier to do in the summertime because I garden and I'm out and about and so on. But, actually getting on that treadmill and lifting those weights is something I really need to constantly remind myself to get in to do. So physical though can help me relieve some of my stress. And I do believe that's true. I don't know, maybe it is or isn't for you. Does it add to your stress? Does it add to your schedule that you just can't handle? I don't know. All right, intellectual. So just getting our minds off of our work and getting our minds off the farm or ranch, reading, journaling, here's some ideas. The jigsaw puzzle. My husband and I have taken to doing, so that's kind of more of a wintertime activity, but it really does you're focusing on that puzzle, you're focusing on getting your mind off of other things, can be a good way. So there's the financial. So again, understanding our money management and having resources and having folks that can help us with some of those things can be really, really helpful. I've done this program now several times with our No program. And those folks are actually learning about their finances and sort of how to become better managers of their finances on the farm. And I always say, hey, you are doing something really positive in learning more about that and keeping up with that. And so again, they're working towards, or this is one of those dimensions of wellness that can be really helpful. The environmental, spending non-work time in nature. And of course, that works easier. For me, especially in the spring and summertime, having that garden, having those flowers. Yes, it's kind of stressful when I have to make sure I get them watered. I love it when we actually have rain like we did today. I really think that can be something that takes me away from and kind of it adds to my schedule, I guess. I've got all these things to take care of, but I really enjoy being out and doing those kinds of things. Then often the spiritual thing, connecting yourself with the world around you through meditation and prayer. Other forms of spirituality can be beneficial for stress relief, as many of us know. Our social, staying in close touch with family and friends. And I think that was one of the issues on the flip side during the pandemic. We weren't with our family and friends as much. We weren't certain what to do with all of that. And so it really caused, I think, a lot more stress. And I think as we worked through that, we started to say, hey, and I think people realized, we need to connect, even if it was by Zoom, keeping up with our friends and neighbors a little bit more was pretty important. And so I think we're trying to make up for a lot of that now, right? We're trying to do more of those kinds of activities and being around our friends and family and doing the fun things. And, kind of that's just sort of a natural thing that people have gone to do more so. The occupational, allowing yourself time to recharge and establish healthy boundaries, that work-life balance. So a lot of what I've talked about already kind of, not always dwelling on work, not always dwelling on the farm or ranch and the issues there, but also seeking to do those other things in our life that can be really important, doing more things with our kids and our grandkids and that kind of thing. And so again, emotional, detaching yourself temporarily from stressors, using relaxation techniques and reframing your thoughts and participating in therapy can be helpful. So sometimes that's what we need. We need to reach out and find folks that we can actually talk to and, help us through some of the situations or the stress that sometimes, has been building. So here, and I'll mention this a few times, or this is part of in our presentation here, is that we put together, there's a really nice handout on the 8 dimensions of wellness called the Wellness Wheel. So you'll see the same eight items there. And ruralwellness.unl.edu, we've got a rural wellness team here at the University of Nebraska in INR and extension. And on that website, it's really a website of resources. And you'll find the Mending the Stress Fence as one of the program areas, and you can click on the handout. So I've got a number of handouts there that you can go to and find. So I just wanted to mention this our handout on the Wellness Wheel lists through what we just talked about, but there's multiple suggestions, like on the physical side thing, we talked about exercise in general, but also getting 6 to 8 hours of sleep as part of our physical wellness. One of their suggestions, eating a balanced diet. like under the environmental, let's see, I surround myself with people who support me in my journey of being healthy and well. That's sort of that environmental wellness. So anyway, there's some really nice suggestions, a whole page of suggestions on what we can do to sort of help reduce our stress on a day-to-day basis. So I would really encourage you, if you have an interest at all, go to our Rural Wellness website, click on the Mending the Stress Fence program, and you'll get to the handouts. And the wellness wheel is one of those. All right. Okay, so now let's kind of turn our attention to, so what if there are family and friends that we have kind of noticed that you know, seem to be really under stress, or that might be even leaning towards that distress point. What can we do about that? And it's, you know, asking that open-ended question promotes the relationship and trust. And so we can understand more where they're coming from, and basically getting to that empathy sort of stage and really understanding and trying to help them. And so part of how we do that is to ask these open-ended questions. So there's a couple slides here now where we can think about what that really means, okay? So your closed questions, of course, where you're asking someone, well, really, you know, are you having a bad day? And they might say, well, yeah. And you've just asked, how are you having a bad day? So no, so let's try to explore that more, okay? You know, tell me about what's you know, happening today, you know, with you. You know, is there anything that's really bothering you? Again, is there anything that's really bothering you? Could be kind of closed-ended, but let's talk about you know, really kind of what's going on. And let me see if I can be of any help of any sort. Okay, so the closed-ended, you know, they might respond to sometimes, or I guess, or I don't know. You're not really getting a lot out of it. But asking the open-ended questions allows for the richer, deeper conversation and building trust and improving that relationship. So here's some more examples. So let's say, you know, are you feeling okay? Would be sort of one of those closed-ended questions. How do you feel about that? Would be a way to open it up and tell me what's bothering you. Okay. So let's say they're having some kind of financial situation going on. Did your loan officer give you an advice? You know, I mean, no, that wasn't helpful at all, you know, whatever. But on the open-ended side of things, what communication have you had with your loan officer? What have you discussed? You know, is there a plan or something that you're developing with them? You know, just kind of asking those questions to get more information. So tell me about your future goals, could be open-ended, as you could see. What's holding you back from making a decision, rather than, are you ready to make that decision? All right. So some more here. So tell me about the things that are going well for you. Tell me about the things that are really bothering you, as we just saw. Okay. Tell me about the people who might understand your situation. Tell me about the people you might consider talking to about your situation. Okay. So open-ended thoughts here versus the closed-ended. What steps are you taking to manage your stress? And how do you hope I might be able to help you? Well, rather than, do you need some help? How might I be able to help you? Would be another way of saying that. So again, we want to watch our friends and family, and if they're getting to that, there's that prolonged distress kind of situation, we might also want to pay attention to how they're acting or how they're feeling. And this is just a short list, and there's definitely programs that can get into a lot of depth with this, but just you know, thinking about some things that we want to be watchful for. And sometimes it's that they might actually talk or write about you know, suicide or death. Okay, that might actually be a warning sign. All right, feeling hopeless. They might just feel like they just can't get out of the funk that they're in. They just can't get out of the stresses, and they feel trapped or burdened, and you notice that they're just really sort of acting and feeling that way. They might actually start giving away prized possessions. They might be trying to make a plan or acquiring means. They're buying some weapon, or they're or something that you notice different about them. You want to watch for. They might say their goodbyes. They might actually isolate themselves from others. I know we had a friend that ended up completing suicide, and we actually weren't with him a lot, but had basically heard that he had pulled away from even his church and even didn't attend certain social gatherings and so on. And it's easy for us not to notice those things if we're not around that person all the time. And we should never blame ourselves if someone actually goes through this. Let's say, oh, I should have caught that. I should have saw that happening, no. But if we're aware of some of these things, we might be able to see when something's getting really bad, or somebody's really distressed and they're thinking about all this, their loss of interest in just about everything. And there's definitely a mood change, might be a sign. So I just mentioned those in brief, but let's say folks kind of think sometimes, though, too, it goes against, if you bring up the word or bring up the thought of suicide, that they actually might carry that out. But research has shown, no, that is not the case. Are you having thoughts of suicide is a question that can be really very helpful, actually. And asking directly does not increase the risk of suicide and may provide the person with relief that someone actually sees that they're struggling. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's not, sometimes somebody might get upset with us because we've asked that question. They might, but I've heard people say it's better to lose the friend than it is to lose them to see that they lost their life. Okay, so it's still okay. So what if someone says yes? Okay, I think it's important to understand or think about, do not leave that person alone. Call for help and take them to a hospital or a healthcare provider. You really don't want to leave someone alone. And definitely now it's been made easier to call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 988. It's a 988 number now, and we should all have that. Keep that in mind, or keep that handy in our phones if we can be there to help someone. But definitely, that's kind of the key thing, is don't leave someone alone. So here again, suicide prevention resources, there's that 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. There's a Veterans Lifeline, and that number is there as well. The Nebraska Rural Response Hotline. Now, I think this is pretty important for us to keep in mind in our rural areas of Nebraska, is that there's that hotline, and there are actually no cost vouchers that are handled through them, where folks can actually go and get some mental health professional help. Okay, and so there's they have had in the past up to like 5 vouchers for folks that are seeking help with that. So, because again, if we're struggling financially and we're like, oh, I can't afford to go and see a mental health person, this is designed to help, so that there are vouchers that folks can actually utilize if there is that need. Okay, there's a Nebraska Family Helpline, raising kids, some information on that can be really helpful. And there again, there's our rural wellness website. So we've got, there's some podcasts, there's lots of different resource information there, and you can cruise around that and find some information. So also, we've had these little cards. I think it's important for people to understand that Nebraska needs you. Your community needs you. So that's part of the card. And Nebraska Extension Cares, and there again, there's our rural wellness website. And then we have the Rural Response Hotline, again, that number for the free vouchers if needed. And then the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is mentioned there again, that 988 number. and the Nebraska Family Helpline. So again, we do have these cards available. So if you have in your area know folks or know of an office, anybody that would like to have some of those cards sent to them, we're glad to send a quantity to you. And I do have some available in my office, and just send me an email, put in the chat that you'd like some of those cards, and we'll get those out to you. So if they're just sitting on your desk and you could hand those out to folks, hey, it's just a nice little resource and reminder of some of the resources. There's just a lot of different resources, so we do have those included in several slides here as well. And I know Ryan will post an evaluation after this. Is there any questions, Shannon, that you have or see?
Yeah, so I do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
So I guess my question is, you kind of discussed if you see signs of someone who is stressed and stuff and how to talk to them. What if you are the stressed person and you kind of are at a point where you feel like you really need to talk about that with your friends or family? Like, what are some ways to potentially discuss stress with them if you're the one that's stressed? Does that make sense? Because I didn't pick up on that in the PowerPoint, so I'm sorry if I missed that.
No, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, I would say, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to try to talk with folks. Now, not everyone's going to be comfortable though. Okay. So you might want to find those folks that, can talk to you or want to talk to you.
Yeah.
And really even finding a mental health professional and talking with someone, because again, I think, yeah, obviously it's really important for us to take care of ourselves and to make those connections and to seek the help. So that's a great point. It's not always that somebody has to see, you under stress and try to help you. You can be proactive and helping yourself for sure. Good question. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also, I know you kind of touched on the land discussion, but I think that's a very sensitive topic, at least within my family. I'm like a fourth generation farm and ranch kid. And so, right. And with the increased cost of living and inflation and everything else, it is a discussion that we've had to have. And I was like, just having those discussions are very hard. And I was like, I know you gave some resources, but do you have any additional ideas on like ways to deal with that? And just having those discussions, because I think those are hard to have for a lot of people.
Well, I think the point that we try to make in this program is that that's what really makes sort of brings on a little bit more stress with farmers and ranchers, because our land and our farm, our businesses there that utilize the land, have been in our families for generations, and we don't want to be the ones to lose it. But it's not like it's going to be the end of the world, if you do. Okay. I mean, we don't want to, and it does cause a lot of stress, but we know it's happened. We know that farmers and ranchers at times have sold out, or there's times when, there's not a successor, let's say. I mean, that's our whole thing with land, the transition, succession types of stuff. Sometimes families end up selling, and it might not be that my generation, we don't sell, but my kids are going to sell, at some point in time, and we can't always help that. But I think the point with this program is that that's what really makes it really hard. And it could be true with a business in town. Let's say this business in town has been in, multiple generations, right? And there's that stress of, I don't want to be the one to lose it. I want to take care of it and do even better than my predecessors did, but that can, maybe there's things that are sometimes out of our control. Weather's one of those. We've talked about those things in agriculture that are really tough to overcome sometimes. But then again, we want to sometimes, and I guess I'm thinking about this is that we need to separate, here's our land and here's our business, but I'm a person. How do I take care of myself and my family members? And so, I got a lot of stress, but I also want to think about those wellness dimensions and those things I can do that are separate from the land and separate from my business. And so I think if I'm well, if I help myself, then chances are I may do better in even keeping that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's a good answer. We have a
good
couple
point.
more questions too. So, on the rural response hotline, do you know who answers the financial and or legal service questions?
Not right
Or is it a
offhand. I mean,
referral?
they do have some folks and they might, they might rotate, but I think you could just ask like who
Okay.
that is. If you call that hotline, ask
Okay.
who is available or who helps with those kinds of things, and they'll tell
Okay.
you. And they would
So
help
do they have
connect
like
you.
paralegals or attorneys or like legal aids that they
They have had, yes, they have had a lawyer
okay.
that, and there may be more than one. There's, that try to cover and help answer some questions, but
Oh,
definitely it's worth, if you have any questions about that at all, I would definitely give them a direct call and ask those questions to them.
okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. And then someone also would like to know if stress affects productivity.
Well, I think it does. I mean,
Yeah.
there's times, I don't know, if you stop and think about it, there's times, and everybody handles it differently. That's again, part of the whole story here is that sometimes I can be so stressed that I'm stifled, you know,
Yeah.
and that's not, productive. And
Hmm.
hopefully I'm not stifled for too long, right? But it could linger on for days. It could, that I just can't handle anything else. But again, I'm me, I'm one person, and how does it affect me? Does it
Right.
affect, I mean, it can affect other people as well. I mean, it just
Yeah.
depends on you. And it might be that stress actually motivates you to get more done, right?
Yeah, I think maybe it depends on the kind of stress. There's probably a lot of factors, like you said, it's a personal thing. I know I get into like cycles of indecision when I'm super stressed, where I'm like, I don't know which decision to make. So yeah.
That is definitely a sign of stress sometimes, is just being indecisive,
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
absolutely.
great questions.
Yeah. We had a lot of good questions, I feel like today.
Yeah.
So
Well, anyway, I think that's the end of what I had to share. So
okay.
but go ahead and we can end it.
Okay, sounds
Yep.
good. Sounds good. Thank you everybody for joining us today. A recording of this webinar will be posted at cap.unl.edu, where you can also register for other upcoming webinars. And we would also really appreciate it if you would give your feedback on the brief evaluation that should pop up in the chat over there. And when you exit the Zoom, that will help us today know how everything went and inform us on future webinars and things you want to hear about. Thank you again for joining us. We greatly appreciate it.
And also, I want to add that I guess I just thought of something here, is we can
Yeah.
actually do these programs out on the road. So let's say you're a professional that works with agriculture, works with farmers and ranchers. We've got a program sort of aligned more for you. We can actually bring it out to your business, to your community, and also even Mending the Stress Fence, this program we could bring out to your
Mhm.
community. So let us know if there's ever anything we can come out and do for you, and share this message with others around you. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.